each time I try to record, that happens. Hi, I am Maria Jose, and in today's video I will be talking about my favorite fiction book, which is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which I have right here, but I will not be carrying the entire video because it is way too heavy. This book is the first part to a 10-book series called The Stormlight Archive. Until today, there are only 4 books published of this series, the first one of them being The Way of Kings, but we also have Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, and Rhythm of War. All of these books belong to the epic fantasy genre. But to get a little bit more into the story of The Way of Kings, we first have to talk about the world it is set in. The world is called Roshar. Roshar is constantly struck by some serious and very powerful storms called high storms. These high storms can be very damaging to the major cities of Roshar and also to the small east villages of this world, but they are also the only way from where the Roshar citizens can get hold of light and money, so these both elements, citizens and the high storms, kind of complement each other and are dependent on each other. There are 4 principal characters on this book. The first one of them, and being my personal favorite, it's called Kaladin. Kaladin is a dark-eyed slave who used to be a surgeon apprentice, but he went to war in order to protect his little brother. We also have Dalinar Kholin. Dalinar is a high prince whose brother, the later king, got assassinated, and now he is involved in a war in order to avenge his brother against the Parshendi, who are his enemies, but well, that's a whole other story. We also follow Shallan. Shallan is a young thief who is trying to become the apprentice of Jasnah Kholin. Jasnah is Dalinar's niece. Shallan is doing this in order to save her family from economic bankrupt. The last but not least character we follow in this series is Szeth. Szeth is the assassin of King Gavilar, the brother of Dalinar Kholin. Throughout the story of this book, we get to know how these 4 lives of these 4 different people intersect with each other, and we also get to know them better, a little bit of their background and what got them to the situation they are living right now. One question a lot of readers, me included, have about this book is where Brandon took the inspiration to write this amazing story. And trust me when I say to you that yesterday I watched around 15 YouTube interviews and read almost half a dozen of fan page articles about The Way of Kings, and I couldn't find the answer to this question anywhere. But I did find some facts about Brandon writing this story, so I'm gonna tell you those and count them as inspiration. So, Brandon himself considers this book the work of his life, and I kind of get that because he started thinking about writing The Way of Kings when he was only 15 years old, and taking into account that he is now around 32 years old, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I would also consider this book my masterpiece if that was my case. On the other hand, in a lot of interviews, Brandon mentioned the philosophical conflict on whether the means justifies the ends or not. And I think that this conflict also served him as an inspiration to write the story. Not only because this conflict comes up several times in the story, but also because it forces us, the audience, to imagine ourselves in the situations that we are reading and to think to ourselves what we would have done in this situation or in this specific scenario. And I think that is so cool and so important for an author to have that kind of connection and involvement with his audience. This leads me to my next point, which is what I liked about this book. And I think the effort Brandon made to make us, the audience, involved with his story is what makes this book different from any other fiction book I have ever read. This book makes you feel like you are there with the characters, with Dalinar, with Shallan, with Kaladin. It makes you feel like you are part of Roshar and part of this immense and incredibly complex universe. And I think that is such a valuable thing for any fiction book that makes you feel out of your world. This book just makes you feel like you are part of the story, that you live in Roshar, and I think that is one of the reasons why I like this story so much. One thing I disliked about this story is that at the beginning of the book I didn't understand a lot of things. Like, I was so confused with all the references Sanderson was doing, all the other names he was saying. I didn't know who anyone was, where I was, what I was reading. I didn't know anything. And I was so confused at the beginning. Even now, I am still confused about some things, but I think that's the point of a 10-part series, that you aren't completely clear with everything in the first book. But I think that's one thing that I didn't like so much, because I like to understand where am I, what am I reading, and who am I reading about. And with this book, that didn't happen. Well, and as a conclusion, I think that the thing that got me so invested into this book and that made it one of my favorite books of all time is the ability it has to show and change my emotions. While reading this book, I felt anger, happiness, sadness, I felt amused, and I felt anxiety in a good way. As I said before, this book makes your imagination travel. And I think that is the purpose of every fiction book, to make you get out of your home without even getting out of your home. And in these times of coronavirus, I think that is so important, that we cannot leave our house safely right now. And books like this, the stories like these ones, are the ones that help us get out of the everyday matters and just makes us travel to a world we don't know and makes us live adventures with some fantastic creators and fantastic fictional characters. And I think that's why this book is so amazing and so important to read. Thank you.